There's a reason people underestimate you, why they dismiss your ideas, why they test your patience, push your boundaries. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're visible. You show everything, you feel everything, you announce everything. And in a world where silence equals power, being loud equals being prey. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that the moment you display your strength, you create a target on your back. Because power isn't about what people see, it's about what they can't predict. You've been trained to believe that showing off proves your worth, that posting your wins validates your progress, that announcing your moves commands respect. But Machiavelli would laugh at this. He'd see it for what it truly is, strategic suicide. Because every time you show off, every time you reveal your hand, you're bleeding power. Listen carefully. The world has conditioned you to equate visibility with value. You think if they can't see it, it doesn't count. If they don't know about your wins, it's incomplete. But that's the trap. That's the lie that keeps weak people weak and predictable people powerless. Machiavelli lived in an era where showing off meant death. Renaissance, Florence was a battlefield of egos, where princes who couldn't resist displaying their might fell faster than those who ruled in shadows. He watched men die for their boasts, rulers collapse because they needed the world to see how clever they were. And he learned the most dangerous lesson of all. Strength that is flaunted becomes weakness. The strongest man in the room is never the loudest. He's the one watching, calculating, waiting while others betray themselves. He's the one who lets silence speak louder than words, who allows mystery to build more respect than any display ever could. But today, we do the exact opposite. We share our goals on social media before taking the first step. We post victories in real time. We document every meal, every workout, every relationship milestone. We call it authenticity, but Machiavelli would call it what it really is, giving your enemies a roadmap to your destruction. You see, in politics, as in life, the loud become predictable, and the predictable become vulnerable. When you announce your plans, you give competitors time to prepare counter-moves. When you show your emotions, you hand manipulators the keys. When you reveal your strategies, you teach others how to beat you at your own game. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Those words aren't advice. They're a warning. Appearances invite judgment. Exposure invites attack. The more you display, the easier it becomes for others to define you. Think about it. The loud entrepreneur who brags about plans before execution. Watch how competitors steal those ideas or sabotage them completely. The person in meetings who dominates every conversation. They sound strong, but they quietly lose respect because people see them as needy for attention. Now picture the one who says little, but moves with precision. Others adjust to their presence. They're not loud, they're undeniable. Why? Because speech is commitment, and commitment too early is limitation. When you speak, you declare your position. When you show off, you reveal your weapons. The moment you do, others begin preparing. Machiavelli understood that real strength lies not in being praised, but in being underestimated. The fox survives not because it brags about its cleverness, but because it conceals its moves until it's too late. The lion rules not by roaring endlessly, but by the threat of force withheld. Modern culture confuses noise with dominance. We're trained to equate presence with posting, leadership with loudness, power with performance. But here's the truth Machiavelli knew. The more you show, the more you owe. The world begins to expect. And when you fail to meet those expectations, It doesn't forget. Visibility creates a debt that performance must constantly repay. Silence creates space to move freely without owing anyone a show. This isn't just theory, it's psychology. People don't fear what they fully understand. They fear what they can't predict. When your actions are always on display, you become explainable. When your mind is constantly revealed, you become controllable. But when you remain quiet, calculating, and calm, others are forced to guess. And in that guessing, they reveal more about themselves than you ever do. Machiavelli would see today's world of performative success and shake his head, not because he was against ambition, but because he knew how easily that ambition could be destroyed by premature exposure. He wrote about promises and broken words. Your past statements become chains. Your public declarations trap you in old versions of yourself. And once the world expects you to be a certain way, deviation looks weak. Silence, however, is freedom. It's your right to pivot, to evolve, to adapt without apology. Those who master power master restraint. Imagine two warriors. One walks into the arena and proclaims his victory before the fight begins. The crowd cheers. He raises his sword, confident. The other walks in silently. He meets his opponent's eyes, says nothing, moves like a shadow. Which one would you fear more? We don't fear the loud. We fear the unknown. When you show off your money, your body, your relationships, your plans, you think you're winning. You think you're intimidating. In truth, you're creating targets. You're inviting envy, resistance, sabotage. And worse, you're training yourself to need external validation. Machiavelli warned us about fear versus love. And fear, true fear, requires distance, mystery, not bravado. The need to be admired is the seed of self-destruction. Because once your self-worth is tied to what others see, you become their slave. You start tailoring your actions to applause. You chase optics, not outcomes, and power slips away. So what's the alternative? Become unreadable. Move in silence. Execute without announcement. Speak only when words add weight. Let results, not declarations, tell your story. This isn't cowardice. This is control. Control over your narrative. Control over your opponent's understanding. Control over your destiny. Machiavelli didn't advise people to hide out of fear. He advised them to say only what served their ends. To understand that influence isn't about being seen. It's about being felt. Quietly, powerfully, unforgettably. The next time you feel the urge to share your plans, to prove your worth, to flaunt your edge, pause. Ask yourself, who benefits from this display? You or the ones now preparing to use it against you? Remember, the strongest forces in the world are unseen. Gravity, time, pressure. They shape mountains without sound. Be like them. Be still. Be sharp. Be silent. When a man speaks before he moves, he gives his enemies time to prepare. He gives his rivals something to study. He becomes a map, visible, traceable, predictable. And once you are predictable, you are no longer powerful. You are manageable. Machiavelli understood this intimately. His writings weren't just political. They were psychological blueprints. He knew that power begins not with domination, but with control, not of others, but of yourself. And at the heart of that control lies one critical skill: knowing when to withhold. Why do people show off? Because they want certainty. They want admiration. They want proof that they're worth something. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't seek validation. It seeks leverage, and nothing gives you more leverage than silence. Not passive silence, not fearful silence, but chosen silence. Controlled, calculated, dangerous. There's a pattern that shows itself across all levels of power. The higher someone rises, the less they speak. The more weight their words carry, the less often they're used. And when they do speak, people listen not because of what is said, but because of what was held back. The beginner explains everything. The master explains nothing. He doesn't need to. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "Titles don't honor men, but men honor titles." The power of the man precedes his position, and that power is built through restraint, not just in words, but in behavior, in expression, in emotional reaction. Show-offs are easy to provoke. They rise to bait. They take criticism personally. They react loudly and visibly, giving others exactly what they need to tear them down. But the Machiavellian operator doesn't flinch. He doesn't explain. He doesn't try to win the argument because he's not playing for applause. He's playing for position. Think of the most influential people you know, the ones who truly shape outcomes. Are they the ones shouting the loudest in rooms, or are they the ones whose silence makes people nervous? This is the power of strategic invisibility. When you're loud, people track you. When you're quiet, people imagine you. And what they imagine is almost always more powerful than what is real. Visibility limits you. Imagination magnifies you. This is why kings once sat behind veils, why emperors were seen only in ceremony. Not because they feared their subjects, but because they understood perception. Once you are common, you are no longer compelling. Modern man violates this principle every day. We live in an age where people willingly leak their own weaknesses for attention, where we reward overexposure, where privacy is mistaken for guilt and subtlety is misread as absence. This is why the average man cannot command respect, because he doesn't understand mystery's value. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. In other words, what they see matters more than what you actually do. So if you show too much, if you display the entire process, the effort, the hesitation, the frustration, you diminish the finished result. The magician who explains his trick loses his audience. Your achievements don't speak louder when you broadcast them. They speak softer, because every word you use to justify yourself weakens the impact of what you've done. Every detail you display gives your enemies a chance to dissect it, and every boast you make turns attention from your results to your ego. The disciplined man, the Machiavellian man, doesn't announce his victories. He multiplies them in silence. He lets others interpret, speculate, wonder, because the more they wonder, the more they respect. And the more they respect, the more power he holds without ever needing to demand it. This isn't about being invisible. It's about being strategic in how you're seen. There are moments to step into the light, but those moments must be chosen, not craved. They must be rare, deliberate, and loaded with intent. A lion doesn't roar all day. He waits. He studies. And when the roar comes, it means something. The problem with showing off isn't just that it weakens you. It's that it changes you. Slowly, you begin to perform instead of act. You begin to chase applause instead of results. You start dressing for reaction instead of purpose. And eventually, you become a caricature of what once made you dangerous. This is the trap of the showman. The moment he becomes addicted to his audience, he becomes their slave. Machiavelli would see this clearly. He would tell you, don't play to the crowd. Play above them. Let them talk. Let them wonder. But never let them fully see, because when you are seen too clearly, you are no longer respected. You are measured, compared, diminished. Mystique is the shadow of real power. Lose the mystique, and you lose your edge. So how do you build that mystique? You remove the need to prove. You replace display with discipline. You begin to act without explaining. You begin to win without celebrating. You say less, but mean more. And in doing so, you force the world to come to you. Not because you shouted, but because they noticed what wasn't being said. That's the quiet war Machiavelli fought in every sentence he wrote. Not for noise, but for control. Not for fame, but for influence. And in a time when every man is told to speak, those who master silence become gods among noise. The strong man is not the one who demands your attention. He's the one who doesn't need it. The greatest advantage a man can possess is the ability to remain silent and let others expose themselves. In the court of power, every boast, every overshare, every impulsive explanation is a reveal of weakness, of insecurity, of lack. Machiavelli knew this. He saw it in the fall of princes, in the betrayal of allies, in the missteps of those who mistook attention for strength. They thought their performance was persuasion. They thought their noise was dominance. But in the end, they were outmaneuvered by men who said less, watched more, and moved only when the moment served them. To understand this, you must first kill the illusion that being understood is always valuable. It's not. In fact, it's often the opposite. The moment people fully understand you is the moment they stop fearing you. They stop respecting you. They start calculating how to surpass you. Machiavelli didn't write for people who wanted to be liked. He wrote for those who wanted to last. And to last, you must make yourself difficult to grasp. He wrote about following great men and imitating those who have been supreme. And what did those great men have in common? They knew the value of concealment. Caesar, who crossed the Rubicon in silence. Borgia, who made no declarations until his enemies were already cornered. Even Machiavelli himself, who embedded his deepest lessons in allegory, in implication, never in loud instruction. The world has always punished those who display too much, but never more so than today. In our time, the surveillance isn't just governmental. It's social. It's self-inflicted. People volunteer their secrets. They post their vulnerabilities. They document every win, every loss, every passing emotion, believing that doing so gives them power. It does not. It gives power to others. To watch, to compare, to judge, to attack. You cannot control what you've already released. Machiavelli would urge you to build what he called fortresses of the mind, places where your true intentions are known only to you, where your ambitions are not shared, they are executed, where your process remains invisible until the product is undeniable. Those who build in silence build stronger. There's a reason architects don't show unfinished blueprints to critics. There's a reason generals don't explain their battle plans on the eve of war. There's a reason kings don't ask the crowd for approval before they act. Because in power, anticipation is more valuable than exposure. The unknown is leverage. The silent room holds more tension than the loud one. The unsaid shapes behavior more than any speech. The Machiavellian doesn't just control others. He controls what others are allowed to know. This is where the ordinary man fails. He feels tension and rushes to relieve it. He feels doubt and speaks to cover it. He feels triumph and cannot help but scream. And in doing so, he teaches the world how to read him. He gives away the code. But the dangerous man, the man who wins, he resists that urge. He learns to hold, to sit in discomfort, to resist applause, to speak only when silence no longer serves. This is not the silence of submission. This is the silence of control. There's a difference between being quiet and being unreadable. A man who is merely quiet is passive, but a man who is unreadable is active. He is shaping perception by withholding just enough to make people wonder. That wondering becomes power. People begin to fill in the blanks with their own fears, their own hopes, their own insecurities. You become a mirror, and that mirror distorts their judgment in your favor. Look at any powerful figure in history. They understood this game. Churchill spoke sparingly, but each word landed like thunder. Marcus Aurelius wrote more for himself than for others, his thoughts private, his discipline internal. Even modern CEOs, the ones who truly lead, speak less in meetings than they listen. They are not performers. They are players, strategic players. Machiavelli saw through all illusions. He knew that charisma fades, that applause dies, that fame is a fragile shield, but a strong mind, concealed, composed, unreadable, that is unbreakable. So ask yourself, in a world where everyone is performing, what happens when you don't? What happens when you refuse to explain yourself? When you decline to show your process? When you stop advertising your every move? You gain space, you gain clarity, you gain control. Others begin to talk about you instead of to you. They speculate, they react, they project, and while they do that, you move quietly, with force, without needing permission. That is how empires are built. Not with noise, but with moves that cannot be anticipated. Not with validation, but with vision that is not diluted by the crowd's gaze. Machiavelli would say, to rule without resistance, you must first remove the need to be seen. Let the crowd chase attention. Let them overexpose. Let them burn themselves in the spotlight. You remain in the shadows, not as a coward, but as the architect of a power they will only recognize once it's too late. And when they do, they won't know how you got there, because you never showed your hand. You didn't shout, you didn't flex, you didn't compete for their attention. You just moved. There's a law of nature that most men forget. The loudest animal is rarely the deadliest. The wolf does not bark before it bites. The serpent does not announce its strike, and the storm does not explain. It arrives, suddenly, without apology. This is the reason Machiavellian silence is so rare. Because it demands discipline. It demands that you become immune to the need for reaction. That you find power not in being known, but in being unknowable. The unknown is feared. The predictable is managed. Choose who you want to be, and remember, power is not just what you do. It's what you allow others to think you might do. And if they don't know what that is, they will hesitate. And that hesitation is the space in which you win. It's not the showman who becomes king. It's the shadow figure, the one who appears only when the move is already made. The one who is steps ahead but says nothing until it's over. Machiavelli would not tell you to be invisible. He would tell you to be deliberate, to make them think you're playing checkers when you're playing chess, to smile while holding a blade, to nod while keeping score, and to speak only when your silence has finished its work. This is the power of not showing off. This is the power of presence without performance. Say nothing, watch everything, and move only when it serves the wind.